Hey, everybody. Can I be real with you guys for a second? Just a little bit. So I've been teasing that I'm going to make a Mueller Report video for a long time. I said I was going to wait until things really shook out until I explained it. And while I might do that when that actually ever comes to the surface, I really want to have a conversation with you guys about the election of Trump, the Russia obsession, and sort of just where we are now. Maybe I can try and even, offer some hope for those disenfranchised people who really put a lot of hope in, the Mueller report coming down and all of the people that they saw as threats to the American Republic being whisked away in, democracy working as intended type situation. Now, I'm not unsympathetic to this position. I think I'm not alone in thinking that the day after the 2016 election was shell shock, a little bit. I was in the middle of some really big tests, and even then I could barely get anything done that day. And I remembered being in the room when all the announcements were coming down and watching people just get more and more depressed. That this was what was going to happen. This is what we were going to be facing. And so there was some rumbling about Russia doing things to mess with the election, and there was a lot of people speaking about Trump being involved. And so I get it. It was a thing to cling on to for hope. The idea that this election was an aberration, that it was things not working the way they were supposed to. Russia meant that it was a foreign intervention that caused the election to go the way it did, and that it wasn't a problem with the system, that there was no introspection about why someone like Donald Trump won the election. It was easy. It was the bad people. And that, like many conspiracy theories, is comforting. It's a security blanket. It's the way that you can face the ambiguity and darkness of the post-2016 period. And so I can imagine that if you are, someone who considers himself on the right side of history, a liberal who believes in equality of people, believes that democracy works, believes that if you trust the system, it'll do the right thing, and then watching what happened in 2016, that could be, I hesitate to say it because it's so grandiose, but in some ways traumatizing. And Russia, like with, in my mind, the 9/11 truther movement, which is something that you can say, well, my worldview doesn't need to be shaken because, a small group of terrorists can't take down a massive building. It had to have been the government. That makes more sense. Governments are capable. And people wouldn't turn their backs on a demagoguing, whatever you want to call Donald Trump. The system's working fine. It was just that there was other agents at play. That is, of course, until you got to the end of the Mueller report, which resulted in a few arrests, but no more indictments. The whole Donald Trump having his big Watergate moment and going down was not going to happen. And I have to say that it wasn't nothing. Russia didn't, sit by the sidelines and twiddle their thumbs during the election. There is solid evidence that they tried to mess with things. It's just not enough to be a crime on behalf of, the Republicans. At least not all of them. And right now there's a bit of like an attempt to re-rally this energy by trying to get the full and unredacted Mueller report. But might I propose an alternative to trying to really stick with this? And I mean, we do have confirmed things that do imply that Russia was involved in trying to mess with the election. Paul Manafort is doing time in prison because he was money laundering, basically. He was deep in debt with a Russian oligarch, and on top of that, he was working very closely with a pro-Russia Ukrainian political party. not a good look for someone who was a campaign manager for Trump for a while. And also it showed that people like Donald Trump's own son, Donald Trump Jr., and Roger Stone, the real-life Batman villain, were interested in getting information from the Russians, especially dirt on Hillary Clinton, which is not unheard of in electioneering in the past, but it's not like unheard of. Russia is not the first country to have done that, and probably not even the only country to have done that in the 2016 election. Trust me, if you wanted to really blow this open and find out how many countries were messing with the American election, you'd be surprised. And on top of that, a third thing is that Trump was building a Trump real estate venture in Moscow that was in talks while the election was going on. And that is an extreme conflict of interest. But I do have to say that if the hope was to get Trump impeached, the energy could have gone into many of the other things that Trump has already confirmed to have done that would have been impeachable offenses. And either talking about that as an example of why Trump he could actually commit crimes and not get impeached, or trying to put more energy into that and trying to push that process. I mean, it's already confirmed that he paid off Stormy Daniels, a porn star, to basically be hush money for having sex with her. That is an impeachable offense. Not to mention there's more than enough evidence that Trump has quite a few mob connections. There was a Belgian documentary that was all about it. And on top of that, he literally bragged about it on The Apprentice. So, that's an angle you could have gone down. But to be honest, the Republicans were not going to sell out a Republican president and damage their brand, potentially for an entire generation, in order to pursue those routes of justice. That's not how politics works, and especially not how the Republicans work, and double especially how the post-Mitch McConnell Republican Party works. Not to mention, the Republican base likes Donald Trump a lot more than most Republicans, and the Republicans coming together to take him down would not have played well with them. No, I don't think this is the angle. I do think that the bigger angle is that all the people who saw Russia as their way of clinging to a American political system that was working as intended need to do a little bit of introspection and look into why Trump won the election, and also why the candidate at the time, Hillary Clinton, lost. I mean, you talk about why Donald Trump talking about things getting worse for people resonated, because I think a reckoning is coming for 40 years of neoliberal economics that cannot hold any longer. And trust me, I get it. I'm not being sarcastic. Introspection is hard. Nobody likes to look at your fundamental assumptions about the way the world works and think some of these might really be wrong. You don't know what Jenga piece you're going to pull out that could collapse everything. It's not fun to look into the abyss of your mind and see what looks back. And I get it also because there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of ambiguous stuff, and just enough to say that something was going on that it was easy to cling to. And I understand that it was really easy to be confused. I was fairly confused. Even when I was skeptical, I was never near as sure as someone like a Glenn Greenwald, for example. There is a silver lining to the Russia investigation not coming out the way that a lot of people were hoping. This can be a learning moment. Since the 2016 election, those who have not been obsessing with the Russia investigation have been pushing to reform the opposition to Trump in a way that will speak to the pains that the Democratic Party was ignoring before. We have a coalition of people who are trying to reform the Democratic Party, who are trying to fix the underlying issues that cause so many people to become disenfranchised with them, and speak to the real and true pain that Americans are experiencing right now. There's, of course, a whole bunch of them, but, AOC, Ilhan Omar, there's many, many more. People are starting to insist that the things that we've been told since childhood are impossible might actually be possible. Bernie Sanders, the person who was considered unrealistic and non-electable and not charismatic is the most popular politician in America, and after the first quarter of 2019, has raised a historic $18 million off 525,000 donors, an average of $20 a voter. That is not just unprecedented, that is a grassroots movement. That is something not seen in a very long time. There's now room to no longer relitigate the 2016 election and to look forward and to see what we can do now and what we can do next year and what we can do in 2020 to turn things around, at least in America. Of course, I'm speaking in a very America-centric thing as a non-American, which makes things all the more complex, but just like, go with me here for a bit. It's not too late to push for all the things that were thought to be impossible. That 525,000 donors, these new Congress people, this is hope. This is a hope I have not seen with young people or the Democratic Party in a long, long time. So if you're feeling despondent that the Russia investigation ended and Trump didn't go down in flames, maybe it's time to join this movement. Let's do awesome stuff together. Come. Join us.